Lads, Christian, the Haver Cardman here, back at you today, and I just got one quick question for you. Have you ever wanted to be Bob the Builder, but in Yu-Gi-Oh? Because today, I'm going to be showing you the Toolbox Deck. So basically what this deck is a combination of scraps and machinas, as well as some other engine pieces and whatnot. Basically, the entire point of this deck is to basically be a combo version of anti-meta. You have Fluanderies and whatnot, which is set to establish floodgates and whatnot before your opponent gets to play and then reacting to what they do on their turn. And you get other anti-meta decks like that tend to establish first and then, just try to delay the opponent as much as they can. Where in this case, the Toolbox deck, you are going to be letting your opponent establish whatever they want, use up all of their resources, break their board, and then make your own. So it's basically like playing first, but your opponent's hand traps are on the field instead of in their hand. So that's kind of the entire purpose of this deck. It's meant to just go break boards going second, set up a really powerful board that they can't get through with their limited resources afterwards, and really just be able to deal with any problems you come across, whether it be back row, whether it be monsters, whether it be graveyards. This deck is just meant to cover all of those bases. So without further ado, let's get into the profile. Alright, so as you guys can see here, we already have a very big appreciation built for this deck, seeing as I have the scrap playmat, custom scrap tokens, and field center just for the flex. But I actually have a full, complete deck profile for you guys today, including main deck, extra, and side. This is probably one of the first times I've actually included the side deck. There are a couple of changes that I'm waiting to make in this deck. I'm just waiting for a couple of cards to arrive, which I'll cover when we get there. But in the end, they're not like too substantial to the actual deck and the way that it plays. So it'll just affect a few minor things, but I'll bring up those interactions and whatnot once we get to them. So let's go ahead and dive into the main deck. Alright, so starting off with some of our main monsters here. This is going to look weird because I'm doing this from right to left in your guys' perspective, but it's just the way that it works for me. So we're going to start off here with 3 copies of Scrap Raptor. This is I'll go through the actual cards and then I'll come back through and like talk about what they do. So we got 3 Scrap Raptors, 3 Scrap Recyclers, 3 Heavy Freight Train Derricrane, and there's a big reason why we're playing 3 and not lower numbers. But we'll get into that later. And then 3 Jizukiru, the Star Destroying Kaiju. It's actually funny that this is the Kaiju of choice for this deck, but once again we will get into that later. 2 Scrap Golems, don't want to open the fridge, so might as well have a backup. 1 Machina Fortress, and this is actually where we start getting into like the toolbox part of this deck, where you get the individual tools to deal with specific situations. 1 Machina Metal Cruncher, 1 Machina Citadel, 1 Ruin Force, recently released out of Burst of Destiny. Super awesome to have this card finally. This was a big reason on why this deck profile came out so late, is because I had to wait for those to arrive. 1 Crystron Rosenix here, 1 Codebreaker Zero Day, and then to finish off the monsters, 1 World Legacy World Chalice. So that is a total of 7 toolbox cards that are all just like one-ofs. You have, of course, your 3 Derricrane and your 3 Kaijus, which are also toolbox pieces in a way, at 3 of. So you get plenty of toolbox pieces, and the Scrap Raptors and Scrap Recyclers are actually the ways to get into your toolbox. They're kind of like the key to open up the box. So let's go ahead and get into the spell cards. And we actually are not running any traps in the main deck. So, alright, starting off with the spells here, we got 2 copies of Scrapyard and 2 copies of Fossil Dig. This is basically 4 extra copies of Scrap Raptor, all of which are 1 card combos. So basically with the 3 Scrap Recyclers and 3 Scrap Raptors plus these 4 Searchers, that is a total of 10 cards to get you into a 1 card combo so far. And then we have 3 Dark Ruler No More. Once again, this is a toolbox board breaker deck that establishes its own board afterwards. You don't care if you can't OTK your opponent, as long as you can build your board. It's basically like an OTK, but without reducing their life points. Next up is 3 Urgent Schedule, because this deck really is aimed at going second. This is also another 1 card scrap combo, which means that you have 13 cards in your main deck that will get you into an instant scrap combo. And I think what the math of this is, because this is a 42 card list, that it comes out to be like 91% chance of opening a starter. Going second, anyways, when you got 6 cards in hand. I'll put the math on screen here so you guys can see. Next up, 2 World Legacy Succession, 2 Machina Redeployment, 2 Twin Twisters, I'm starting to probably drift towards the edge here. Let's scoot this over. And then 2 Pot of Avarice. And to our 1-ofs, 1 Scrap Factory, 1 Monster Reborn, and 1 Harpy's Feather Duster to round off the main deck here. So once again, once we get to the very end of this deck profile, I'm going to like pull out certain things and show you how they kind of interact together and why all of these cards are the way that they are, but you need to get full context of the entire deck for it all to make sense. So on to the extra deck now. So starting off with the extra deck, our most important part of the toolbox kit is going to be our Link monster, so we'll start there. Got 2 copies of Scrap Wyvern, absolutely mandatory for this. I mean, it's your combo basically. Like, that's how you make your plays. 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Codebreaker Virus Swordsman, 1 Lib the World Key Blade Master. For Link 3, we have 1 Codebreaker Virus Berserker. I'm thinking about adding a Topologic Trisbana to this list, but we'll see on that. I think I'm still waiting on getting a copy. So Link 4 is the kind of like biggest part of this toolbox deck and what makes this like really function as well as it does. 1 copy of Saryuja's Skull Dread, 1 Mech Knight Crusadia Avramax, 1 Nightmare Griffin, 1 Apollosa Bow of the Goddess, and 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World for our Link monsters. There is actually going to be 1 more in here, and that's going to be a single copy of Link Spider, which is going to be for your Crystron Rosenix when it summons its token, because in a lot of these cases you need effect monsters to be able to link off, and if you get the Crystron Rosenix later in the combo, you want to have the Link Spider to get an effect monster. So that is going to be 1 change that's going to be made in here. I'll show you in a second the card that I'm going to cut out for it. But for our Synchros, we are playing 2. We have 1 Cloud Castle and 1 Virtual World Shen. Both level 9s that are super easy to make. They just have different versatilities for whatever matchup you're going for. Shen's way better for going first, to be completely honest. But Cloud Castle just provides you extension play by being able to summon out a level 9 from your graveyard, which you can then use with the Cloud Castle to make a Phantom Fortress Enterblathir. You can get a free hand rip. It could be another way to break apart a board a little bit more because it's non-targeting banishment, so you can out a Dragoon if it's already negated. I guess it doesn't matter if the Dragoon's negated, you can get rid of it in other ways, but Enterblathir is just an awesome card, and if nothing else, it's a hand rip. And this last one here is actually what's going to be taken out for the Link Spider, and that is 1 copy of Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max. I was kind of bouncing around between playing the trains in this deck or not. I did have the Lieb in here for a while as well, but I cut that first before the Gustav, because I figured until I get the Link Spider, I can still use the Gustav to burn for 2k with the rank 10 potential that I do have here, but I just don't value the trains as much as I would the other Link materials, or Link bodies, so this will come out for a Link Spider, and I'll debate in the future if I want to find a way to put a Trisbana in here, but right now, this is actually a pretty solid lineup, so that's the extra deck. Let's go ahead and move on to the side. Alright, so most side decks typically include stuff like hand traps or, you know, extra going second cards, but obviously this is a deck oriented at going second, and our entire side deck is basically to help us set up for going first. And there's a couple of cards in this that are going to be changed as well, but once again, we'll get to that towards the end of the side deck here, and once we get to those cards, that'll be swapped out. So starting off here, we have 1 extra Machina Fortress, 2 copies of Machina Irradiator, sorry for bumping that, and then 1 more second here, and then a Machina Megaform. I'm just having a day here. 1 Machina Megaform, 1 Machina Citadel. We also have a Curious, the Lightsworn Dominion. Will most likely, if we're going first, we'll swap out like a Cloud Castle or just whatever extra deck monster isn't really good against our opponent for this, and you'll see the reason why for this later as well. Extra copy of Scrap Factory, just in case we want, you know, once again, if we're going first, gives us extra extenders. So next up, we are running 3 copies of Triple Tactics Talents, where this is kind of where the deck really loses its budget argument. I mean, like, you could kind of make the argument that it wasn't budget with the urgent schedules in the main, but this is where you really lose it, because you're looking at $40 a copy on Triple Tactics as opposed to $15 per the urgent schedules. But you know, it is what it is. This actually, I was really debating on cutting this card because it was underperforming for the longest time, and then I had several games in a row where it just kept coming up, but only as a side deck card, where I'd put it in games 2 or 3, and then like it would actually perform then. So I am going to keep it in here. It is just insane for this deck, allowing you to get that free advantage, especially since you're going second. You don't open up the Dark Rulers or, you know, ways to, or if your opponent can like hand trap still, Triple Tactics can definitely be relevant. So next up here is our 3rd copy of Twin Twisters, just in case we're going against the back row matchup. The third, Machina Redeployment, which I will once again explain later on once we get into some of the card-by-card details. And then one, Call by the Grave, because this is just a good card. I'm actually going to be swapping this one out for a trap card. I believe it was... It only was Royal Decree, but there was a trap card, Floodgate, I was planning on swapping that out for, so... Our last two cards of the side deck here are the Dimensional Barrier as a one-of, which will make sense later once again, and the Imperial Order as well. So this is our side deck. This rounds off the entirety of the deck, but let me go ahead and get you guys the actual deck breakdown. And in the event that you guys do want a combo tutorial of this deck to see how it functions, because it ideally has like the same combo line, but there's just different ways to go through it, which makes it very flexible. If you guys would like to see that, just let me know down in the comments, and if this video hits 10 likes, if we just hit 10 likes, like straight up, I'm just doing a combo tutorial, but if you guys want to see it, just let me know down in the comments as well. I will be more than happy to do it, because I love this deck. Alright, with that being said, let me go ahead and get some stuff set up here, and we will get into the actual deck breakdown. Alright, so here we are. I know this layout kind of looks a little bit weird, but it'll make more sense as I'm going through this here. So, with this deck, once again, the entire premise is to be going second, tear apart your opponent's board, and then build your own from scratch. So it's literally like being a construction crew, where you're going to tear everything down first and then build up what you actually want instead. So to do that, actually, we're using the Scrap Recycler, and we're actually recycling this guy. I know, funny pun. Recycling him several times in a turn to dump as many machines to the graveyard as we can. And there's actually plays where Scrap Raptor is the better combo starter. Like, if your opponent does not have a Droll and Lockbird, you want to open up with the Scrap Raptor instead of the Recycler, which is why you have all these search cards for it. But ideally, Scrap Raptor is mostly there to get you into your Scrap Recycler so you can get into combo, but you want the Raptor in your graveyard as well to get you Synchro combos later on in the turn, which is why we have stuff like the Cloud Castle and the Shen Shen. So if you can open up with the Raptor, ideally, like, that is the best way to do it. Or if you can open up with both, actually, if you can get a Scrap Raptor and a Recycler, it's perfect, because then you can use your Raptor to search your factory, which is just fantastic. So, but anyways, so these are the cards you actually ideally want to see in your opening hand, is any of your 3 Urgent Schedules, any of your Fossil Eggs or Scrapyards, or any of these 6 cards here between the Raptor and the Recycler. These are the 1-card combos that you need to be able to start your plays off. And there's actually a way to turn the Machina Redeployment into a starter, which is why we have the side deck, but that's more intended for going first. So, with that being said, you access a lot of your tools like your Scrap Golem, which is going to let you recycle the Recycler a ton of times, and then theoretically, at least once, he should be used to recycle a Raptor to make a Synchro play, because that gives you a level 4 tuner and a level 5 monster to give you instant level 9 Synchro monster, which is just awesome. The stuff that we typically want to dump with the Recycler is all of these 1-ofs down here. Usually the first one, if you don't open up the extender in hand, is going to be your Crystron Rosenix, because that just allows you to banish it from the graveyard to give you a token with your Scrap Raptor, or Recycler, I mean. So then that way you can actually link off into your Scrap Wyvern and get your combos going. Because if you guys don't know, what Scrap Wyvern does is he special summons a Scrap from the graveyard and then destroys 1 card in your field. Then his second effect is if a Scrap card is destroyed, I believe it's by card, if Scrap monster is destroyed by card effect, well, you control this monster except during the damage step, you can special summon 1 Scrap monster from your deck and then destroy 1 card on the field. So I used to use this going first, but you would have to usually pop itself or like something in the back row at the end of it, because the second pop is completely mandatory, right? So you special summon from the graveyard and then you have to immediately pop there. And 9 times out of 10 what you're going to do is you're going to special summon your Recycler, pop it, and then get its second effect to special summon the Golem from deck, and then after that you are required to pop 1 card. Which is why I realized that this deck is really better at going second, because you can use that second pop on your opponent, because the first one you have to pop a card on your side of the field. You have to, like for when you're special summoning from the graveyard, that's completely mandatory. But the second pop at the end of his effect, you can pop any card on the field. So it could be your opponent's back row, it could be one of their monsters, you know, you can just pop any card that you want on the field, which is absolutely insane. And then that gives you a Scrap Golem on field so that you can revive the Scrap Recycler and get another dump to the graveyard, because funny thing, Scrap Golem and Scrap Recycler, neither of which are hard once per turns at all. They are just soft once per turns. Actually, technically, Scrap Recycler is only a once per turn in the fact that it's on summon. So if you can just keep summoning him back out, then you can just keep getting more and more dumps to your graveyard. Which will fuel stuff like you could dump a Machina Fortress to discard machines that you don't want in your hand to the graveyard, which is nice because you can special summon from graveyard and use that from there. You can dump a Machina Metal Cruncher. Actually, this is like the biggest brain play in this deck. if you don't open a heavy freight train Derek Crane, this is why we run 3, because you can dump the Machina Metal Cruncher. If you have the Scrap Raptor in your graveyard and you can make it into a Cloud Castle, what you do is you then use the Scrap Raptor and the Scrap Golem to make Cloud Castle, revive the Metal Cruncher that you sent to graveyard off of Scrap Recycler, get your search off of Machina Metal Cruncher, which you're just going to reveal 3 heavy freight train Derek Crane if you didn't open one, and then you're going to overlay these 2 into Enter Blathmere, get a free hand rip, get another card off the field, out of the graveyard, you know, whatever you need. In the case of Blathmere, you'll have another extender in your hand. If you can get another recycler out, you can immediately summon the Derek Crane then. Just absolutely insane. Of course, Machina Citadel is just one of the most insane Machina cards just made entirely. If you have the extender in your opening hand with a Scrap Recycler, then you can actually use your Recycler to dump the Citadel, so that you can use the extender that you have in your hand to make the Scrap Wyvern, and then when you pop the Recycler after summoning it off of the Wyvern effect, you can also chain block with the Citadel to summon him out as well, which is absolutely incredible. Next up is once again the newly released Machina Ruin Force. This guy will win games on his own. I've actually had several games where he was the entire reason that I won, and he is actually a big reason for me being able to play through Nibiru's. Like, I've had people that Nibiru late enough in the combo that all I have to do, like, just the right time in the combo, I've had this happen at least twice now, where the Nibiru at just the wrong time, that I was able to just banish machines from my graveyard, summon this guy out, and then with the Nibiru token, I was able to just make a lib. Because I already had my World Legacy monster in graveyard, it just requires 2 monsters. So you link these 2 together to make a lib, and then you just get full combo right again. And you get the same exact end board that you were already going for, so like it doesn't change anything. And it's the funniest thing to watch them surrender after that. They're just like, yep, okay, that's fair. So Ruin Force, and just the fact that he's a 4600 attack by body that negates during the battle phase. I know people think that sounds really niche, but honestly, that effect has come up so often, it's not even funny. Once again, the Rosenix, just to be extra access to get into your Scrap Wyvern if you don't have any extenders in your opening hand, or any ways to get extenders. You could always use it later on in the combo too. Like, you could always just dump it later, it's just fine. Codebreaker 0 day for the Codebreaker package. This is actually like what gets you the end board that you need, so super awesome. World Legacy World Chalice is here for the lib part of the combo, which is always just a really insane part of this combo. And it's the best World Legacy target that we have for this deck specifically, because on the following turn, we can banish it to search our second World Legacy Succession, which is our searchable Monster Reborn, basically. Like, that's what this card says for this deck, essentially. So we got all this stuff. We have the extenders here in the Heavy Freight Train Derek Crane, Scrap Factory, Monster Reborn. Of course, 2 Pot of Avarice actually is mandatory for this deck. I really want to run 3, just because you need to shuffle your extra deck resources back to be able to use them repeatedly. But yeah, this is literally just one of those decks that, like, you don't need hand traps, you don't need to have disruptions directly against your opponent. But if you go into games 2 and 3 and you're going, say, against, like, say, a control deck, you want to establish a board against them, that's what you have the side deck for, because you can side things like your Imperial Order, your D-Barrier, if you're going against something like Sword Soul or Shadal, or, you know, anything that's, like, heavy on one mechanic. Of course, you've got your Machina Redeployment, because what you do is, when you're going first, you side out the 3 Urgent Schedules, and whatever going second cards else you have in here, like your Dark Rulers and your Kaijus. So you can side in your going first stuff. Triple Tactics actually becomes a lot better going first if you get hand trapped. Second, Scrap Factory, and you side in your Curious with these Floodgate cards like Imperial Order and Dimension Barrier, because what you do is you mill these off of Curious's effect, just one of them, like whichever one fits better, and then you use Nightmare Griffin later on in the combo to discard a card, get one of these back to your field, and then draw a card, because 9 times out of 10 you're having it co-linked, so just being able to do that is absolutely awesome. Machina Redeployment, all 3 copies become a starter when you're going first, because what you do is you get, you side in your Megaform and your 2 Irradiators, at least, with the Redeployment, so that if you activate Redeployment and you get the Megaform and Irradiator from your deck, you can actually use the Irradiator Megaform combo, which is you pitch the Megaform with the Irradiator to special summon the Irradiator, and then you activate Irradiator's effect to target itself and special summon back the Megaform from the graveyard, popping the Irradiator. And then you use Megaform's effect on field to tribute itself and special summon out your Machina Metal Cruncher from deck. So if you don't open up any Scrap Recyclers, but you open up a Machina Redeployment or those 2 Machina cards, you can instantly make it into a Metal Cruncher, which you can just select your 3 Scrap Recyclers, and then add one to hand, and you haven't used a normal summon yet, so you just get combo like that. So basically, you turn your 3 Urgent Schedules into 3 Machina redeployments as your starters, and you can just go off from there. And then it also fuels your graveyard with Machina monsters. But the only reason we don't play it in the main deck is because we would have to sacrifice these extra board breaking cards. And we really need those to make sure that our combos can still go off. But if we're going first, obviously we don't need the Dark Rulers, we don't need the Kaijus as much. They can still come up like later game, and of course Urgent Schedule you can still activate during your opponent's turn should they break your board. But honestly, for the most part, you'll be just fine. So this is the deck I've been testing with. If you guys have any thoughts or ideas in the description or in the comment section, just go ahead and let me know. Like I said, you guys might need a combo tutorial to like make this make more sense, because right now it might be a little bit confusing, especially because I didn't go through much of the extra deck here. I just kind of went over the cards we have, but 9 times out of 10, your end board after you break your opponent's board is going to be a Nightmare Griffin and a 3 or 4 negate Apollousa, depending on how you opened up. And the thing about this is, honestly, Nightmare Griffin steals so many games. I've had so many players that just actually like refused to read. Oh, hello, my light just went out. Sorry about that. That actually refused to read the Nightmare Griffin and his effect. All they think about is the discarding to set a spell or trap from your graveyard effect and then drawing a card when he's co-linked. That's all people think Nightmare Griffin does. A lot of people don't read the second half of the effect where it says special summon monsters cannot activate their effects unless they are linked. Basically, everything you do in this deck is going to be linked to some kind of arrow. But when you're facing off against opponents that aren't playing link combos, like you get Shadal or you get Sword Soul, or anything like that, they honestly, if they don't read that and they don't link their monsters, I've actually had Nightmare Griffin allow a guy to summon a Dragoon with his Red Eyes Fusion in hand, but he couldn't use it because Dragoon cannot activate its effects under Nightmare Griffin, and he didn't read that far, he didn't attack over it. So when it came to my turn again, he's like, why can't I negate? And it's like, well, I have Griffin on field, buddy, so sorry. But anyways, that's all I got for this deck profile today, guys. Once again, let me know your thoughts down in the description or down in the comments. I'm really excited to hear what you guys think about this. I am actually working on a series. This is where I'm going to announce this. I'm going to work on a series in which I am going to grind ranked Omega, and I'm going to try to get to the highest rank I possibly can with this deck, and I'm going to make it like a weekly or a bi-monthly series. We'll see how that goes there, just depending on time. But this is the deck I'm going to be taking online, of course, with a few exceptions. A couple of card changes here or there, which I've already made on Omega and I've already been playing with. I actually have some games already recorded and ready to go. So that being said, I hope to see you guys in that series, and I hope that you like this deck enough to want to see a combo tutorial of it, because I am very excited to do that. I might even just do it regardless, honestly, we'll see. But if we can, let's still at least hit that 10 to 15 like goal, guys, and see if we can hit that much. But that is all I got for you. I will stop rambling on here. So thank you guys for joining, and remember, good fun. Have luck.